Hi everyone and welcome to another session in our series of AI webinars. Today we will be tackling something a lot of teams are quietly struggling with. You've got the access to the AI tools, you've been told how to use them, but the adoption hasn't quite stuck. So Crispin is going to walk you through a practical guide to actually making that shift happen. And by the end, you should have some key takeaways that you can bring to your team and try out this week. If you've got any questions, drop them into the LinkedIn comments and Francesco and Alex will be there to answer live, and hopefully we'll have enough time at the end for a quick Q&A, but I'll hand over now to Crispin to get things going.
Cheers, thanks a lot, Rob. So as Rob says, this is about getting your whole team to actually use AI in a productive way. So, not just handing them some tools and hoping for the best. And also what I'll do later on is walk you through the exact rollout process we used at the Coders Guild to get everybody on the same page and using AI effectively. So we've got this this graph that Anthropic put out earlier this year about the actual adoption of AI in terms of tasks, not in terms of people, but in terms of the reach that the things that we're actually doing with AI is the red section, and the blue is the theoretical possibilities, not in the future, but right now, what AI is capable of delivering. And the research against that I want to compare this to is there's a lot of research gone out over the past 12 months about efficiency gains in AI adoption, and all of them sit somewhere between 10 and 55%. So Penn Wharton, McKinsey, multiple studies, they're all pointing at this same bracket. So if you the 10% at the floor, you can do, that's really easy math. So if you're a company's turning over 1.2 million, that's 120k benefit in a year. And what could that mean for your business? Where would you repurpose that money? So and to bring this into to make it kind of more real, then we look at what we've measured in our efficiency gains as we've been rolling out automation and AI in our operating model. First projects were immediately giving us 15 to 25% in terms of efficiency, and some of the recent projects we're doing I've got like 50-60%, and that's just through going through the process, understanding what the process is, and making adjustments and using the tools that are readily available to us. So in the next 20 minutes or so, I'm going to show you how we did it, and then what that means for you as the leader of this transition. So who am I to be telling you about this stuff? Well, hello, I'm Crispin. I've done 20 years in software digital strategy. Spent the last 10 plus years completely obsessed with running a training firm, obsessed with how people learn complicated technical things quickly. And also working in the apprenticeship field, how we get people to show value back to the business as fast as possible. And last year, a lot of this work has had me working with Skills England and their predecessors with the government. And last year, I worked with them to develop the new level 4 apprenticeship in AI and automation. And to do that, I spoke to loads of SMEs about their needs, about their blockers. We also had research commissioned through Innovate UK. So to be able to identify what would turn into the rollout plan of AI adoption as a 12-month exercise. So I know a fair bit about what's getting in the way. Like I said, I'm going to try and do this in 20 minutes. Usually we have a half-hour webinar, but this one I feel like there will be quite a few questions, so I'm going to try and rattle through my slides in 20 minutes or less. Please do drop questions in and comments into LinkedIn, and we'll pick them up as we go through, and hopefully there'll be lots of time at the end for us to answer specific questions for everybody. So where do we start with? What's actually getting in the way? Actually, what would be great is if you're watching live on LinkedIn right now, drop some comments in. Tell us what's getting in your way right now on for your AI adoption, for your team all using AI. So like I said, I spent a lot of time last year talking to businesses across loads of different sectors, like e-commerce, policy, consultancies, marketing agencies, retail, hospitality, all different walks, and loads of different problems on the surface. But the thing that we come back to every time is, how do we take that first step? How do we get past the overwhelm, which we all have as people running businesses? The overwhelm is pretty intense, and finding the time to prioritize these things is, I think, like probably was our main blocker. Another one for us, I think, was actually coordinating a project around the adoption of technologies in a useful way. So, you could be like curious but stuck. Maybe you're not sure where to actually start. Maybe you don't know if you should go with your Copilot in your 365 or move to Claude, or whether ChatGPT is working, or whatever, like confusion around the tools. Maybe your team has gone off in loads of different directions. You've got some people on Claude and some people are ChatGPT, some people on Perplexity or DeepSeek, doing different stuff, but it's in different directions, and you maybe lost track of what's happening or what's useful. Or maybe you had a go at it, you didn't get the responses or the gains that you were looking for straight away, and then it kind of feels a bit underwhelming, and you kind of move on. And then underneath that, of course, like there's kind of like a quiet fear, especially when you start talking to your team about using AI more, and the rhetoric that we have, across media and social media. It's like, are we just gonna AI ourselves out of our own jobs? Are we gonna just like replace people with robots? And I guess, like, whether or not that is going to happen is kind of immaterial. I think, like, the main thing here is if we don't address that fear before we start, that's going to kill your adoption before you've got anywhere. So what do we do about it? So I'll tell you what we did is, and I know, like I said, I will go through the kind of step-by-step process, but the actual main steps towards team-wide adoption came from creating this mandate. So, and I think this is what's really good about this, is it kind of addresses all of the things that I'll talk about in the next few slides, in that we're not trying to think about tools. We're not mandating use of AI and automation. We're not putting KPIs against people's token spend or their, what efficiencies have you made. We're trying to do something that we can rally around as a group of people. And the thing that we came up with is, what we're looking to do is create more time for people-to-people exchanges. So more time with our learners, more time with our customers, more time discussing things together. And then I think this is critical. We framed it around people, not profit. So it's not where we can cut costs. It's reduce headcount by 3 people. It's what can we do together where we can make 6 people's jobs easier, better, more fulfilling. And I think that framing changes everything about how your team receives what comes next. And it's certainly, I do think that worked really, really well for us. And what that kind of leads onto is, like, our mantra, or my mantra, if you like, and it's the thing that I regularly bore everyone with, is this idea of people, process, tools, in that order. This was kind of the people, process, tools, or people, process, technology, was a thing kind of made popular in the like 70s and 80s, and it's described as a triangle. But we always think about it in this linear format of like, who are the people, what are the processes that they need to do, and then what are the tools that make those processes better for those people. And I think, you know, in the framing like that and making it, I think it's like we got it from like, it's like a DevOps mantra of working in that way. But we've adopted it across everything that we do. And like I said, I regularly pull this slide out in lots of different presentations. So a really important thing I think for this is that people tend to go about this backwards. You're sold a tool, you know, or you've already got a tool, you've already got Salesforce, and what's the AI bit in Salesforce that now everybody should use? But that's backwards. If we go people first, we're looking at what do the team need, what are their fears, what's the domain knowledge that's the special sauce, what's the things that AI can't replace, and what do we want to do for these people? And then once you've got that bit, that's your advantage, because your team knows your customers, your edge cases, your business, and that reframes the whole process. So there's my segue into process. How are we going to actually do this day to day? Where are our blockers? Where are our bottlenecks? And then we get onto the tools. And then and to be honest, the tools are almost arbitrary. The tools can change out, but if we've got the people and process bit right, you can change the tools, because the strategy won't change significantly. And that brings on to the practice is about use. In this case, we're looking at practice of how do we use this regularly on real work, and reflect on that practice, which is you know, to come back to how we work as an organization, how we deliver training. It's all centered in practice and reflection and feedback. So I think another thing that's a thing to highlight for younger team members or recent graduates. Lots of people new to the workforce, especially if they've come from education, have been kind of schooled against AI, because the education system does not celebrate or you know, historically has not celebrated the use of AI in education. So people do tend to be more wary, more fearful of AI, you know, stopping critical thinking or things like that. But you know, like the same went down with calculators in the 70s when calculators got cheap. Oh no, it's the death of maths. Turns out it's not the death of maths. It just makes us better at maths. So come back to the team and the leadership part of this. This is about creating that psychological safety for people to try things, and for people to voice their fears, for people to get stuff wrong and try again. And that's not it's not a big change, really, you know. But it is one that needs practice and reflection. It is one that needs constant attention. So let me put these things into like the practical frame of how we went about this at the Coders Guild. So this first stage here is about commitment. So this was, we knew loads of people were using different things, and that was fine. We'd kind of done our experimenting, but then the commitment was a commitment to stop just experimenting and choose a system. So choose a way of doing things and then start rolling it out. So then we come on to a pilot phase we've got there, where we tested the initial things that we kind of done as a hypothesis of like, oh, this is kind of how we see we would use these things. We'll divide things up by departments. So then we picked a department, if you like, of sales and marketing. So Francesca and Alex, with a small group, we looked at some real work examples. We looked at how we would roll out what Rob and I thought we should do, and getting feedback on what would actually be useful. And then we go into like a build phase, so rolling that out to other departments and putting in some like foundational work so that we're not going with a blank canvas. Okay, everybody use this system, do what you want. We were giving people guidance and like a structured way of doing things that was all involved with how we operate in this environment together as a team. We paid a lot of attention as well in the rollout section to where are the cross team or the cross people opportunities, because that's where a lot of the main friction is in business, is when it goes from one team to another. And also, you know, that creates a really good environment of feedback and reflection, because people are able to tell other people in the team about how they do their work and how that relates to other people. So creating that sort of environment where we are regularly discussing these things was super important. So now when we did the rollout, and I think like this is a bit that I think is kind of worth stating, and when I'll follow up this with a blog post and I'll include more information about how we did this. But our quarterly team meeting, where everyone comes to the office for our full team meeting, we designed a bit of training. So rather than go off and do this onboarding course with Anthropic, do this thing with whatever tools you have, we devised a thing where we wanted everyone to get comfortable with the tools first off. So they kind of did their the initial parts around, you know, their custom instructions, and like if they've been using a different tool like ChatGPT, how that mirrors into the stuff we're doing now. And then we had group tasks that were specifically actually useful to everybody's day to day. So what we did was, rather than a tutorial step-by-step process, we left it open. We created some starter documents that specifically went for a piece of information, or could it be a skill, or it might be knowledge and a skill that we would put into the system. And then we went through the process of how we interact with the large language model to decide whether this is a piece for the knowledge base or it is a skill, and how that is developed and installed into the system. So people actually got benefit, rather than just knowing the system, they got actual work benefits out of it from that specific bit of training. And then the last part is about embedding. So this is not a project with a start and end. It has a start, and we have started, but now it's much more about communication, about people finding their own wins and making sure that we're communicating that back to the team and asking for feedback and growing that and iterating on what we've already done. Which kind of brings me back to the point about the tools. Now that we've done this process, the tools are kind of arbitrary. So that's de-risked it a lot for us. If we have kind of committed to Claude as our main shared system, but if tomorrow Anthropic whacked the price of Claude up to something that was out of reach or was difficult for us, we could swap out to something else. We're pulling our knowledge base, our skills out, and they are stored externally from that. So we could swap to another tool. And I think the system that I have described in how we did that rollout, again, is tool agnostic. You could do that same sort of thing because it's a leadership process. It's about what are the things that make your business valuable. The things that make your business valuable is the domain knowledge that your team carries, your customers, your workflows, your context. AI doesn't have that. Your people do. So giving our people the skills to use AI effectively means that we've got something that nobody can replicate. And that is competitive advantage. It's not in the subscription. So let me leave you with this. this is another slide I've used quite a lot. Like I said, I spent the last few years really deep in this, talking to lots of different businesses, building the qualification, running our own rollout. And the thing that I keep coming back to is that it's not about AI. It's not about the tools. It's not about choosing the technology. It's about people and how we invest in them. And from like an us point of view, I think that the businesses in this room are the ones that this matters most for. We don't have enterprise budgets or armies of consultants, but we do know our businesses, we do know our customers and our team, and that's our advantage. And AI is just what we can use to get it at scale. So the operating system has changed, and the question isn't whether to get on board, it's whether your people are going to be the ones who define what comes next or catch up later. So, and please do drop me some questions in the comments. Alex and Francesca are here. Rob's going to try and elevate some of the questions now, and I, in the hot seat, will be trying to answer them. Welcome back, Rob.
Brill. Yeah, that was great. Thank you. We've got
No, you're not.
Am I back?
Yes.
Thank you. We've got a few questions, mainly around what is blocking people at the moment. So we've got Pam ask that her issue was time and understanding the best tools and expense. I'm wondering if you can kind of give some hints on how it doesn't have to be all time consuming. You don't have to submit to the FOMO, and that it actually doesn't have to be expensive. Like our team is on an enterprise tier. It's not costing thousands of pounds a month in API calls.
Yeah, well, I think so. This would be a thing. I think what's the first steps? Because when we look about the blocker of time, in all of the things that I've done with apprenticeships over the years, my main blocker for getting people to take on software developer or tester apprentices is like, oh no, the time that I'll have to put in is too much. Whereas, so we try to make everything around how can we get this person to deliver value back to the business as quickly as possible. We try and get it down to like a 3-month turnaround, and that that's kind of funny now, because the investment that you get in taking a few first steps, especially when you're looking, with your team at what are the quickest advantages to time saving we can get, you're getting that time back immediately, and it's compounded week on week. So the first part, you can free up your own time with these tools without having a massive digital transformation plan. Just start using the tools a bit, start talking about how you could do your first steps, and you'll get that time back the next week and the week after. And when you're iterating on that stuff, that's your time. With the expense thing, that can get expensive really quickly. And I feel like, again, the tools first approach loves this, because if you're already invested in a system and they say, here's our AI tier, please pay for it, then you're going tools first. And now they're in control of how much money you spend. If you go the other way, if you're going people process first, you might not need their AI system. I mean, like we use, Rob, can you think of an AI in one of our tools that we actually use? I can't.
No. It on the systems that we use, generally the AI is not as intuitive or useful as the connectors that we get from Claude. Claude does a lot of the heavy lifting, but the inbuilt tools aren't able to match.
And then we've got some stuff going into ChatGPT and going into Gemini for processing things that they are kind of better at. But so I think to come back to the API calls, these are things that can be helped with by large language models. Are actually pretty good at giving you advice on how not to spend loads of money and how to spend less tokens. And that's a thing. When the automations iterate to becoming more complex, you tend to use less tokens because you're iterating on simple things that get more complicated. If you go in complicated straight away, you burn tokens, and that, I think, you can experience that really quickly if you go and give if you give a large language model a lot of information and no guidance, and watch the token count, like especially if you're doing things with Claude Code, you're burning through tokens that are a waste because you haven't structured your project correctly and you haven't thought about what's next and then what's next and what's next. And these are the things, again, coming back to like, what's our systems, what's our processes, what do we do as the humans in the lead of this, not the loop, we're in the lead of the process.
So if I can chip in on the time thing, especially in the earlier stages of using these tools, there is an investment. If you have to consider it as your personal investment in your understanding, and I block out a small window, a meeting with myself on a Friday to do these things to help me upskill on these tools, and the investment now, it does pay dividends. The more you're putting into these tools, the more the efficiency savings build over time, and it is an investment that you have to put in, but it does return on that investment very quickly once you've got those processes right.
Thanks, Pam. That's a great question.
So we've got another response to the what's blocking you at the moment. Gary put vibe coding, which I'm not averse to, but I think maybe this alludes to the kind of the fads at the time that people, all these new tools coming out, especially in the first quarter of this year. Anthropic were releasing new tools weekly, and there was a demand for our time to keep on top of everything that was being developed, and it was almost impossible. You had to kind of step back and focus. I don't know whether you've got any input on how not to get swept away with the projects that
I think the vibe coding one is difficult because there is such a flurry of tools, and to do vibe coding, you can go and just sign up to Lovable and away you go, you're vibe coding. But to do it really, to do like I guess like meta coding is probably a better way of thinking about it, is you are still coding with an AI partner or AI agent, but the more that you control them and scaffold what they are doing, the better results that you have. Like, I think that it's a big deal. I think the vibe coding, and this is another thing of like we're looking at the stuff that comes out of like, okay, right, software engineering is dead. Like, no, we don't need software engineers anymore. But the really obvious thing that we can see is the best vibe coders are coders. The best vibe coders are software engineers, hands down, like without a doubt. The best AI designers are designers.
We do have a follow-up. I think I completely read that wrong, and Gary's using it to vibe code, but his concern is the impact on the up and coming.
Thanks for the clarification, Gary. I agree. I think the impact, I think, is again like a leadership one. If we are expecting there to be a future for our businesses and our economies, just living for now and not teaching people how to do this work is a folly. It's similar. It's a bigger scale, but it is. I feel like it's very similar to when I first started doing my journey into the apprenticeship stuff. Was it's much easier to learn how to code now because we've got systems like Drupal and WordPress where you can do loads of stuff in the UI, and you don't have to know command line to do this to do the work. You don't have to be able to code from scratch. And then when libraries and frameworks follow those sort of like those content management systems. Again, it was a similar thing. We don't need to do so much now. So, but it didn't stop people joining as juniors and learning that craft. So I think the thing here is like we're in this kind of weird state at the moment where people feel frozen that they can't hire junior people because all of these tools are, the output for a team of developers is so much. But I think we have to wait and see how this plans out. We are still recruiting software developer apprentices. Got 2 vacancies going out next week. People are still hiring and they are still making those pathways for people just because the tools have changed. They've changed dramatically, but in quite a similar way as they have done numerous times in the past. And I think we just
sorry. Just one quick one about another one of Pam's the blockers is the jargon and ethics, which is a real concern, and you do see a lot of it in the media at the moment about the impact. It's difficult to quantify as a business.
In the final minute of the webinar, I was struggling to talk about the ethics of it all. However, the ethics are part of, they're part of the apprenticeship. It's part of the courses that we run for leaders. So when it comes down to it, it doesn't make it more difficult to be ethical. Just because you have a new tool, the ethics of the whole thing are held by people. In particular, the responsibility surely lies with leaders. Rob, the questions disappeared, but what was the thing before the ethics bit?
Jargon.
Oh yeah, so I've got just finally I do have a bit on the jargon. The good thing about having a large language model partner is you just ask them, what does this mean? Give that to me without jargon. One of the prompt that we sent out to everyone from when we did the Claude Cowork starter, part of that prompt says, assume that I don't know any of the jargon words, assume I don't know anything about these things, walk me through everything slowly, check my understanding as I go through this. If you use a word that I think I might not understand, ask me. So you can definitely school your large language model partners to help you with that learning.
Yeah, it's such a powerful training tool. And I don't know whether it's embarrassing or not, but one of my most commonly typed prompts is EL I5. So explain like I'm 5, because it's the best way to get it to kind of give it to you in the most common sense way rather than spit acronyms at you like MCPs and things like that. So we have run a little bit over, so we're going to do the wrap up now if that's okay. Please keep the conversations going. Francesca and Alex will be available to respond to any queries and they will be reaching out if needs be. We'll see you at the next webinar on the 18th of June, where we'll be doing a bit more Claude stuff. So please add those to your diaries. The event is live on our LinkedIn, so save that spot, and we look forward to seeing you again next time. Thanks very much, Crispin.
Thanks a lot. Bye now.